Taurus. There's a kind of fear you feel even when nothing is wrong. You're fine. The bills are paid, the house is in order, nobody's fighting, and yet something inside you keeps waiting for the ground to give way beneath you. Have you ever noticed that? That feeling that calm is just an interval, not a place where you can stay. Most people would call it anxiety, overcare, a controlling personality. But what if it wasn't any of that? What if this constant vigilance, this ever-present fear, even when everything is in order, wasn't something you were born with? What if it came to you already formed, transmitted, as if someone had handed you a heavy object without telling you what it was? Think about your family for a moment. Not the facts, not the dates, but the recurring behaviors. Someone who never truly rests. Someone who hoards money with a fear that doesn't match their actual financial situation. Someone who holds on to resentment for years with a stubbornness no one can explain. Do you recognize any of these traits in more than one person in your lineage? In yourself? This is not a genetic coincidence, it's a pattern. And patterns, contrary to popular belief, don't disappear on their own. They are transferred. They pass from hand to hand, from generation to generation, like a recipe that no one knows why it follows certain steps, but which continues to be made in exactly the same way, because that's how it was learned, and no one stopped to ask if it still made sense. You've probably felt this at specific times, a disproportionate reaction to a small loss, an enormous difficulty in asking for help, even when you need it, an almost physical need to hold things in your own hands, because delegating seems, deep down, too dangerous. These aren't random personality traits, they're echoes, and echoes come from somewhere. In their family, there's a recurring story, even if no one tells it aloud. It might be about scarcity, it might be about abandonment, it might be about someone who lost everything once. And from then on, the entire lineage learned, without realizing it, that security needed to be earned with their own hands, every day without rest, as if relaxing for a second would open the door for everything to crumble again. And here's the part nobody told you. Among all those who carry this pattern within the family, there's always one who feels it more strongly than the others. One who absorbs the weight without realizing they're absorbing it. One who becomes, without choosing, the fixed point around which everyone else organizes themselves. Someone too reliable to crumble, too strong to ask for help, too present to be dispensed with. If you're a Taurus, you may have already suspected that this someone is you. Not because you're weaker or more sensitive than others. On the contrary, it's because you're the only one in the family with roots deep enough to bear this weight without visibly breaking. And that's exactly why, without anyone saying it aloud, you were chosen to carry it. Chosen not as a prize. Chosen as someone silently pointed out at a family gathering that never truly happened, but whose outcome everyone already knew beforehand. You were chosen because you're the only one who could endure it. And enduring for you has become synonymous with love, responsibility, self-worth. But what no one told you is what this costs, and how long this cost has been charged without you realizing where it truly comes from, or if one day you will no longer be charged for this. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. It doesn't talk about destiny or things beyond your control. It talks about a very specific inner posture, one that any Taurus recognizes as soon as they hear it described. The difference between the security built externally, made of things, control, and excessive responsibility, and real solidity, the kind that doesn't depend on carrying everything alone to exist. The material is called the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose, and it was designed to help exactly those who, like you, have learned to confuse carrying weight with having value. If you've gotten this far feeling a little tight in your stomach, recognizing things from your own family in this pattern, that's no coincidence. It's the moment when the body has already understood before the mind, and it's precisely in this state that it makes sense to act. While the recognition is still fresh, before routine stifles this clarity, you just felt again, the way it always has before. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And in the meantime, tell me in the comments, is there someone in your family who has always been the strong one? The one who held everything together even when they were exhausted inside? And in the meantime, tell me in the comments, is there someone in your family who has always been the strong one, the one who held everything together even when they were exhausted inside? Maybe that someone is you, and maybe you took on that role so early and so well that you don't even remember choosing it anymore. You became the person everyone relies on, the one who solves problems, the one who pays, the one who shows up when no one else does. And without realizing it, you started to believe that this was your worth. Not what you feel, not what you want, but how much you can endure without visibly breaking. No one sat you down to explain this. There was no conversation, no agreement, no moment when someone said, "From now on, this role is yours." It happened in a quieter and more efficient way than any agreement. All it took was for you to solve a problem once, to weather a crisis once, to show up when no one else did, just once, for that expectation to become permanent, never to be questioned again by anyone, including yourself. Imagine an old house, one of those that supports the entire roof with a single central beam hidden behind the walls. Nobody sees that beam. Nobody appreciates that beam. But if it gives way, the whole house collapses at once. You are that beam in your family. And the problem is that beams aren't inspected often because everyone assumes they'll just hold it up forever. Notice how this happens in practice. When a family member is going through a crisis, who gets the call in the middle of the night? When the bills don't add up, who comes up with a solution, even unasked? When two people fight, who mediates between them, expending their own energy to restore peace? Most of the time, it's the same person, and this repetition isn't accidental, it's a function that no one has formalized, but that everyone, including you, has already accepted as natural. The curious thing is that nobody apologizes to a beam. Nobody asks how it's supporting all that weight. People simply trust that the roof will remain standing because it always has been. And it's precisely this automatic confidence, this silent certainty that you'll manage, that makes nobody, not even you, stop to notice the accumulated wear and tear inside the structure. But what happens when the beam is also tired and no one ever asked it about it? There is a root within Taurus that is simultaneously the greatest strength and the greatest prison. It is this root that keeps you standing when everything around you is shaking. It is what holds the whole family together in times of crisis, what endures what no one else could, what doesn't budge even when leaving would be the easiest thing to do. But this same depth that gives you stability is what prevents you from moving to another place, even when the soil in which you are planted no longer nourishes you as it should. Imagine a tree with roots so deep that no storm can knock it down. That seems like strength, and it is, but those same roots, so deep, so firm, are also the reason why that tree can never be replanted in more fertile soil, even when it feels, year after year, that it is merely surviving instead of truly flourishing. And here's a curious detail about this tree. The drier the soil around it, the deeper it pushes its roots in a desperate attempt to find any remaining moisture. It's a survival mechanism, not a growth one. And that's what usually happens within Taurus when the familiar pattern tightens. Instead of seeking new soil, you further deepen the resistance you already have, even when it's no longer nourishing you as before. If this root is what binds you to your family's pattern, isn't it also at the same time the only thing capable of freeing you from it? This is precisely the question that lingers when we understand that the same force that sustains can also imprison. And it was thinking about this type of root, deep, stubborn, difficult to move, that the material, the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose, makes so much sense for those who are Taurus. It doesn't ask you to uproot yourself. It teaches the difference between the root that imprisons and the root that sustains a new beginning, something that only truly makes sense to those who have already felt this kind of inner weight. This content may be taken down at any time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Here's something you may never have stopped to realize. You've lived through this same moment before, more than once. That argument where you reacted with an intensity you didn't even fully understand. That sudden fear of losing something that was actually safe. That refusal to ask for help, even when you desperately needed it. These weren't isolated episodes. They were the same echo, resonating within you at different moments in your life, like an ancient voice repeated in a valley, generations after the one who first uttered it. An echo, by definition, is not the original voice. It is its repetition, distorted by distance, but still recognizable to those who know how to listen attentively. If you stop and compare the times in your life when you reacted disproportionately, you will notice a very similar underlying pattern in all of them. The fear that if you don't hold the reins with full force, everything will crumble. This fear wasn't born in that specific situation. It only found in that situation a reason to reappear. And what's most intriguing is that this echo tends to get louder precisely when you're closest to breaking the pattern, as if some old part within you is trying to pull you back into familiar behavior, even if that behavior no longer serves any purpose. It's almost as if the body confuses the familiar with the safe, even when the familiar has long since ceased to protect anything of real importance. How many times has this echo passed through your life without you realizing it was the same sound coming from the same place? There's always a moment in the life of someone who carries this kind of pattern when everything could have been different. An exact moment when the automatic reaction could have given way to a conscious choice. But that moment almost always goes unnoticed, covered by the fog of habit, because no one had yet named what was being felt there in that specific second. Imagine a road with a silent fork, so shrouded in mist that those passing by don't even realize there was a choice there. You've passed through several such forks in your life without knowing you were passing through them. But what if that moment could happen again? Not in the past, which is already behind you, but now, with a name for what you feel and, for the first time, with a real choice before you. Perhaps you've wondered at some point in your silence why other people can leave behind a relationship that isn't working, a job that no longer makes sense, a belief that no longer sustains anything while you remain there, holding on, even feeling the strain. It's not a lack of courage. It's just that for you, letting go has always seemed dangerously similar to what happened at some point in your family's history, when letting go meant truly losing everything. This is the kind of clarity that separates those who repeat the pattern forever from those who finally understand what they are repeating. And it is precisely about this kind of choice, about seeing the fork in the road before crossing it without realizing it, that the material, the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose, was conceived. It exists for those who have felt more than once that they were about to repeat something without knowing exactly what, and only needed a little more clarity to choose differently that time. This material may be removed from the catalog at any time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Now, there's a Taurus trait that's almost always described as a flaw, but which, viewed from another angle, can be the rarest strength of all: stubbornness. That refusal to yield, to give up, to let go prematurely. Everyone has criticized this trait in you, or in some Taurus you know, but no one has stopped to ask what would happen if that same stubbornness were applied not to maintain the status quo, but to finally break it. Imagine a rope stretched taut, pulled from both sides, in an old knot that seemed impossible to untie. The force that breaks this knot isn't the one that gives way first. It's the one that resists, the one that doesn't budge, the one that holds firm until the exact moment when the knot, not the rope, gives way. This resistance, so often called a flaw within your family, may be precisely the only force capable of ending, right there with you, something that has been repeated for generations. Notice that breaking an old pattern doesn't require impulsiveness. It requires the opposite, someone willing to stay, to persevere, to not run away as soon as the situation becomes uncomfortable. Impulsive people change direction easily, but rarely finish what they start. You are different. Once you truly decide on something, you very rarely go back on it. And it is precisely this type of decision, sustained until the end, that manages to break something that has been repeated for generations. If this strength has always been within you, silent and underestimated, why hasn't anyone, not even you, stopped to acknowledge it before? Perhaps because recognizing this strength requires a different kind of self-perception, a perspective that sees stubbornness not as something that holds you back, but as something that, when properly directed, sets you free. It was precisely this perspective that made me understand the true value of the material, the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. It doesn't ask Taurus to stop being resistant. It asks that this resistance be directed to the right place, the place where it finally breaks what needs to be broken, instead of sustaining what should have ended a long time ago. Available units are dwindling, and the content may be removed soon. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There is something profoundly beautiful in the idea that a long story, made up of entire generations carrying the same nameless weight, can find its silent end in a single person, in a single decision, in a single instant when someone finally decides to look back without running away. You were not chosen to suffer what your family suffered before you. You were chosen because, among all of them, you were the only one with roots deep enough to stand still, long enough to understand what was being repeated. There's nothing supernatural about it, and perhaps that's exactly why it feels so real. It's not a curse in the old sense of the word. It's an emotional legacy that has endured for decades, waiting for someone strong enough not to run from it. And if that person is you, this isn't just another burden to carry. It's perhaps the last thing you need to carry before you can finally truly rest, knowing that what comes after you won't repeat what came before. There is a huge difference between carrying a burden because there is no other way out, and carrying that same burden, knowing with complete clarity that it is the last time it needs to be carried. The first way is tiring and bitter. The second, however strange it may seem, can even bring a kind of peace because it has a visible purpose in the end. You're not just holding on to an old pattern. You are, silently, being the one who finally understands enough to stop repeating it. And perhaps that's the deepest beauty of being a Taurus. While other signs flee from discomfort, you have the rare ability to stay, to look what bothers you in the eye without running away, until it finally loses its power. It's not luck, it's not chance. It's your deepest nature working exactly as it should. And if there's something your family needed, without ever being able to name it, it was precisely that. Someone with roots strong enough to stay still until the end. The next time you feel that old weight returning, that vigilance without apparent reason, that impulse to hold everything alone, perhaps it's worth stopping for a second and asking, is this mine, or is this an echo that reached me long before I was born? Just that question, asked honestly, is already the beginning of a different story from the one that has repeated itself until now. And different stories, when they begin with someone whose roots are deep enough to sustain them, rarely return to being the same as before.